Shalom. We are in Parashah Acharei. That means after death. In the context of the feast cycle, we are in the month of Nisan. We are approaching the 14th of Nisan. And on the 15th, you'll note that there will be a full moon. And that's happening this weekend. So now our Jewish brothers, they celebrate Pesach during the week. But if you follow the calendar and the 15th of the month, it's always a full moon on the feast of unleavened bread, as well as Sukkot, which is also on the 15th of Tishri, or the 7th month. Now, what I want to discuss today is, as you can see in the visual, the process of preparation, transformation, and elevation, which associate with the numbers 6, 7, and 8. Starting from the end, 8 means new beginnings, and that is after the transformation process, which is associated with cycles of 7. And before that, we are in a state of preparation, which associated with number 6, which is the Vav, which relates to man, specifically man in a raw, fallen state. A man needs to engage with the cycles of 7. Now, what you'll see in this visual is we've got the two feast cycles, the spring festivals and the fall festivals, parallel to one another. The top one is the month of Nisan, the bottom one is the month of Tishri. You get the 1st of Nisan, the 1st of Tishri, then you get the 10th of Nisan, the 10th of Tishri, then you get the 15th of Nisan and the 15th of Tishri, and then you get the 22nd of Tishri, which is associated with the 8th day, which is also the 21st of unleavened bread, which is the last of the feast of unleavened bread. And the very next day after that is at the 8th day, if you count unleavened bread from number 1. So that will also be on the 22nd. So you can see the parallels there, and that Sukkot and unleavened bread has the cycles of 7, the cycles of transformation. And we know that 7 associate with the Sabbath, the daily week, the 7th day, also associate with the 7 festivals, which we are looking at this coming Pesach. I'm going to discuss that. And then we also have the largest cycles of the Shemitah. I do want to highlight that we are in the 7th Shemitah, the year before Jubilee, which is the 50th year. So we are in year 49, which make it a super Shemitah, and that will end September this year. And normally on the Shemitah we see a reset happening, where in the financial world there's always a financial crisis, there's always a downturn in the markets, and then Jubilee is the time where everything is given back, the reset. And that's why the concept of the Great Reset is planned for this time period on the 7th Shemitah, which will basically have the preempting downturn in order for the Jubilee year, which starts September this year. If you look at the Hebrew calendar, which is then the reset, or the giving back of the land and cancelling of debt and whatever's going to happen, which is a biblical principle which is now being used by the world system in order to deflate all the bubbles of all the money that's been printed. So that's just something as a side note. It places us in a historical cycle of 7. So that's the cycles of 7. As you see, the cycles of 7 are basically red, and it's preceded by the Pesach lamb. And we know that the 15th is after death. The first day of unleavened bread is after the death of the Passover lamb. And that is where leaven is taken out of the house as preparation, and you now celebrate eating unleavened bread to remind you of the leaven that has been removed. And we know that leaven is associated with sin, is also associated with Egypt, sin and bondage, which they left on the first day of unleavened bread. They left after they've eaten the Pesach lamb. They left Egypt, and then they traveled into the wilderness. Now, Sukkot is associated with tents, and the tents is linked to the first place, or Sukkot is linked to the first place when they left Egypt. The first place they camped or stopped was Sukkot. It's a place called Sukkot. So we see that correlation there as well. And Sukkot means to camp in tents in the wilderness, where you are in the middle, in between your previous home, which is the house of Egypt, and your future home, the house of Elohim, or the house of Yahweh. And as a symbol of that, we've got the symbol of the tabernacle in our Torah cycle. But it's also true for us living now, because we are tabernacles, but not you yourself a tabernacle. It's a collective body that make up a tabernacle, or a congregation, or a fellowship. And in the modern day understanding, a church, but I don't like the word church. So the assembly, the fellowship, the congregation represents the tabernacle that now find themselves in the wilderness, in between the two houses. And this house in the wilderness is they are engaging in the cycles of 7, which is depicted by the Feast of Sukkot, that's overlaid with unleavened bread. So Sukkot, or dwelling in tents, or being part of a fellowship within the zoomed out view of the prophetic cycle we are finding ourselves in, even historically in our day, that Sukkot and the fellowships we engage in is for the removing of the leaven and deliberately eating unleavened. Eating unleavened means that we eat from the word of Yahweh. We do not eat from worldly things like we did before. We deliberately remove the leaven. We deliberately remove man-made traditions. We deliberately remove our cultural traditions. And there's one that pops up as well, which is Easter. Now, Easter does not have the right symbolism. It's got bunnies and eggs and all sorts of symbols of fertility, same as with Christmas. But this current event that we're going to go into this weekend is a counterfeit and in the place of Passover, with symbolism that caters for children, so that they can be taught the symbols of the world, which is all about things that your body and your taste buds enjoy. Your palate is set up to enjoy the chocolate and all the things and all the nice games, finding the eggs that the bunny laid, which is totally ridiculous anyway. So that symbolism everyone embrace without even question. But we are going to re-establish and look at the symbols and the symbolism that's associated with Pesach, which is the real event, the biblical event, and what those symbols are. And then there's also a distortion that I'm going to talk about this weekend, about the counterfeit, which is communion, taking the place of Pesach. So they now no longer do Pesach, they do Easter, and then in the place of that they eat symbols for the work of Messiah, and then communion is instigated on the back of the Catholic traditions, which is yet again infiltrated with leaven. It's not of Yahweh, it's traditions of man, their symbolism and their idol worship that they brought into the faith, which is all about Yahweh. And that pollution we discussed yesterday with the bullock, the par, the death to the things that is associated with God, idol worship and other gods. What we also see here is that the process starts with preparation, and I'm going to say it again, I say it every time. Entering into a feast is all about preparation. If you're not prepared, you cannot celebrate the feast to its fullness. And that's also evident for the parable, Matthew 25, of the 10 virgins. 5 of them prepared, they had oil in their lamps, they were ready. It's all about preparation. And then when the time came for the Mashiach to come, with cycles of 7, where we'll have the cycles of 7 of the plagues during the time of tribulation, they will be caught off guard, not having oil in their lamps. And then when the Mashiach come and collect his bride, which make them enter into the 8th day, they will stand outside the door crying because they do not have the right preparation, the oil or the clothing, and their dress is dirty, not without spot and wrinkle. So we don't want to be in that camp. So I'm just going to leave you with that. We're going to discuss that further on Pesach. And I hope you have a lovely day. Shalom.